If you were to multiply two numbers like 2 times a negative 3 or negative 5 times a negative 7 or negative 8 times a 4 or 5 times 10, we know 5 times 10. We know that's a 50. Where people get confused when they start multiplying with negative numbers. Is the answer positive? Is the answer negative? So how do we figure what the answer is? And the good news too, this rule for multiplication, we're going to use the same one for division.
The sign of a bigger number?
Well, not quite. Here's the rule for multiplication. To multiply two numbers, step number 1, multiply their absolute values. Let's multiply their absolute values. Let's take, so the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. What's 2 times 3? 6. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Absolute value of negative 7 is 7. 5 times 7, 35. 8 times 4, 32. That's the first part. The second part, the sign. What do we do with the sign? If the two numbers have the same sign, the answer will always be positive. So let me look. These two numbers have the same sign, the answer is positive. These two numbers have the same sign, the answer is positive. If the two numbers have different signs, what do you think the answer? Yep. The answer is negative. So if the two numbers have the same sign, the result is positive. If the two numbers have different signs, the result is negative. It doesn't matter which one's bigger, which one's smaller. So here the two numbers have different signs. That's a negative. The two numbers have different sign. That's a negative. And that's the rule we use. Same sign, always a plus. Different signs, always negative. When you have more than two numbers, we'll give you another rule for that shortly. But let's try some of these problems. So here's what you have to remember. If you have a positive times a positive, are they the same sign? Yes, what's the result? Positive. A positive times a negative number, are they negative number, are they the same sign? The result is negative. A negative times a positive, are they the same sign? Negative. A negative times a negative, are they the same sign? That's a positive. So if the two numbers have the same sign, the result is positive. If the two numbers have different signs, the result is negative. So here I'm just talking about multiplying two numbers, only two. If three numbers, different story. We'll come back to that. So let's try a few of them. What's a negative 2 times a negative 7?
14.
Very good. Positive or negative?
Positive.
Positive. Same sign. Again, the reason it's positive, same sign. Negative 5 times 3. Negative 15. Why negative? Different signs, right? Minus 5 times a minus 2 times a minus 3 times a 4. Now that's more than two numbers. We didn't discuss more than two numbers. So what do you think we're going to do? Since we didn't discuss them, we just apply the rule for two numbers. Let's go left to right, order of operations, and multiply these two numbers. And negative times a negative is what? Positive 10. So I don't have to put the positive here. You want to put a positive, that's fine. Copy the rest of the problem. Then we take the next two. Different signs. That'll be negative 30 times the 4. And what about the last two? Negative 120. So when you are multiplying more than two numbers, here's what's going to happen. If you have an odd number of negative signs, the result will always be negative. An even number of negative signs the result will always be positive. So if you don't want to go step by step like this, you go 1, 2, 3. I have 3 negative signs here. Is that odd or even 3? Odd, the result should be negative. If I have an even number of negative signs, my answer at the end should be what? Positive. So a lot of people will use that method. Or you can go 2 at a time. Either way. A couple more things we should know about numbers. One of them is called the identity property of multiplication. And the identity property of multiplication states that if you take a number and multiply it by 1, what is the answer? Any number times 1 is always what?
Any number?
Same number, right? Or 1 times any number is the same number. That's called the identity property of multiplication. If you multiply a number by 1, the number stays the same. So what is 5 times 1? 5. What's 1 times 7? 7. What's 4 times 1? 4. What's negative 10 times 1? Negative 10. Any number times 1 stays the same. The other rule is called the multiplication property of 0. Which says any number times 0, the result is what? 0. Or 0 times any number is 0. So if you take a number and you multiply it by 0, the answer is always 0. Five times 0, 0. 0 times a negative 7, 0. 0 times 0, 0. 0 times 4, 0. Couple more rules I'm going to mention here. Howdy. How you doing? Couple more rules. One, we're still in the same section. It's actually the commutative property of multiplication. And you'll see where we use that shortly. I call that CPM, commutative property of multiplication, CPM. And what that means, if you're multiplying two numbers, A times B, that is the same as B times A. If you change them, change the position of them, it doesn't change your answer. That's why I call it CPM. The C stands for change for me. The P stands for the position. Change the position of the numbers. If you have M, which is multiplication, if you change the position of the number, you make A first here, make it second, B is first, B is second, or second first, it doesn't change your answer. So if you have 2 times 3, that's the same as 3 times 2. You go, big deal, we know that. Where this comes in handy when we start dealing with variables, we go, what's x times 2? I go, well, let's write that 2 times x. And if you write that 2 times x, we usually drop the dot in between them and write that as what? 2x. So you'll see me take x times 2 and make it just 2x. If there is no operation between them, it's always assumed to be multiplications. Always. So if I have y times 3, I can write that what? 3 times y, which is what? 3y. Z times a negative 4, I can write that as what? Negative 4 times z, which I can write negative 4z. That's what I'm interested in, really this one. Because you'll see as we get to the algebra shortly, with x's in them and all that, how do you collect like terms, how do you multiply and all the stuff, we're going to be using that a lot. So that's why we bring these rules and talk about them. It's called commutative property of multiplication. If you change the position of the two numbers or the two things you're multiplying, we call them, when you're multiplying two things are, called factor, the answer is usually the product there. When you flip them, it doesn't change your answer. And one more rule, and that's the associative property of multiplication with respect to addition. And that's another big one in algebra. So this is really big in algebra, this stuff right here. The other one that's big in algebra for us, associative property of multiplications. Some books, they just call it associative property of multiplication. They'll stop there. But most books will say associative property of multiplications with respect to additions. Our book stops at the associative property of multiplications because it applies to addition or subtractions. And that rule says if you were to multiply A times B plus C, you can actually break this one down to A times B plus A times C. That's another big one for us. Again, I'm just giving you the names, but I'm more interested really in how to use them. So you start doing a problem, you want to simplify it. You have 2 times x plus 3. Notice I didn't put the times. If there is no dot, if there is no multiplication, it's always assumed to be what? Multiplication here. So I'm going to take the 2 multiplied by this and the 2 times that. So this will equal to 2 times x plus 2 times 3. What's 2 times x? 2x. What's 2 times 3 here? 6. You simplify that to 2x plus 6. If I have a negative 3, times y minus 5. Take the negative 3, multiply it by the y. That's negative 3 times y. Here's the minus sign because we have a minus. And what is negative 3 times the 5? Positive times the negative is what? Negative 15, right? So it's minus a minus 15. What is the opposite to negative 15? We make that a plus, and we change the sign of that to positive 15. So it's negative 3y plus the 15. Any questions so far? I know it's early for some of you, so I'm warmed up, so if you have questions, just let me know.
Just happy to be back.
That's it.
I got trapped in DC for an extra 2 days.
Uh-oh. DC is beautiful. If I was there, I don't mind being trapped there. I didn't want to come back here.
Oh, yeah, but it cost me a fortune.
Oh. Didn't you tell him you know me?
Oh, I knew that. I probably would have gotten back the same day, right?
That's it. Order of operations. Remember with the order of operation, which one? When you have more than one operation in the problem, that meant you might have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all the stuff. Which one do you do first? We had a saying before. Anyone remember? PEMDAS. Very good. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's what some schools uses. So this is the first one that we do. This is the first one. This is the second one. This is the third one. This is the fourth one. We do parentheses first, exponent second, multiplication and division third, addition, subtractions fourth. So parentheses first. What's second? Exponents. What is third? Multiplications / divisions. So which one do you do first? Do you do the multiplication first or the divisions?
Whatever order it's in.
Very good. Left to right, the order. You go left to right. And if you see multiplication first, you multiply. If you see division first, you divide. But you go left to right. And the last thing we do is what? Additions / subtractions, again, left to right. You guys don't need me. So that's the order of operation. PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses first, exponent second, multiplication or division third, addition, subtractions fourth. So let's take a problem, go through it, and see what the answer is. Take a few of them. I have negative 2 times 24 minus 5 times a negative 6. Now let's look at the problem. Do we see any parentheses? Well, you see these parentheses, but there's nothing inside them to simplify. You can't do anything about the 24. You can't simplify that, and you can't simplify the negative 6. Do you see any exponents there? No. Any multiplications or divisions? Yes, left to right. You got to do this one first. A negative number times a positive number, they're different signs. The result is what? Negative 48. There's the minus sign. I also see another what? Multiplications. A positive times a negative. Different sign, the result is what? Negative 30. Any more multiplications or divisions? No. Any addition or subtractions? Yes. Well, how do we do subtraction? In case you forgot, we leave the first number alone. We change the subtraction to what? Addition, and we take the opposite of that number. So the first number stays alone. Don't touch it, unchanged. Change the minus to a plus. Take the opposite of that number. Now we're going to add opposite signs. You subtract the absolute values, the smaller from the larger. 30 from 48 is what? 18. And what's the sign of the number with the larger absolute value? Negative. So the answer is negative 18. Let me try another one. Let's look at that one. I see parentheses here. So do what's inside the parentheses. So the minus 3 is sitting in the front here. Let's simplify what's inside the parentheses. That's 6 minus 10. 6 plus what? Negative 10. Again, subtract the absolute values. 6 from 10, which is what? 4. And what is the sign of the number with a larger absolute value? Negative. So what's inside the parentheses is going to be negative 4. I got a negative 3 in the front. Now you want to multiply two negative numbers. The two numbers have the same sign. The result should be what? Positive 12. Let's try this one. 5 minus 3 times 2 minus 4. Again, what are we doing first? Good, parentheses. So this becomes 2 plus what? A negative 4? And the rest of the problem stays the same. So let's see what the answer to this. Different signs. Subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. 2 from 4, which is what? 2, that's a negative 2. So we did the parentheses. PEMDAS, parentheses done. No exponents. Any multiplications or divisions? Right there. You have a multiplications. Positive times a negative. Negative 6. Any more multiplications or divisions? No. Any addition or subtractions? Yes. So this becomes 5 plus, that's a 6, the opposite to negative 6, which is 6. What's 5 plus 6? 11. One more, then we're done with this section. I think you got it. But let's just add one more twist to it. That's 11 minus 4. I got to do what's inside the parentheses first. There's the 2 still sitting there. What's inside the parentheses? Negative 3 plus 1. Subtract the absolute values. 2, and what's the sign? Negative. Next, we're going to do what? Exponent. Negative 2 squared. What does that mean, negative 2 squared?
Negative 2 multiplied by itself.
Yep, negative 2 times a negative 2. Let's think about it. Negative times a negative, that's what?
Positive.
Positive 4, right? So 11 minus 4 times 4. So negative 2 squared is plus 4. Exponent is done. Any more multiplications or divisions? Yes, right here. 11 minus, what's 4 times 4? 16. And the last step is going to be 11. Change that to a plus. Change that to what? Negative 16. Subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. 5. And what's the sign of the number with the larger absolute value? Negative.